is happening, fellow fantasy GMs? I am JJ Wang. He is the bearded one, DJ Dub. And with our powers combined, we are the Fantasy Couriers.
Okay, so here we are. It's the end of July, exciting time of year. It's training camp season, and I don't know about you guys, but I kind of dig training camp a little more, even though we don't have football, but there's not as many injuries, so we're not going to a draft and all of a sudden you draft a guy and he's gone. Well, what are your all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, as a fantasy football player, it's great because you're not worried about injuries, like you said. And as a fan, you feel like you want to go to training camp and see like the big plays and see them go for it. But as a fantasy football manager, I'm like, yeah, chill out. It's fine.
Well, I think we're still getting
Yeah, I mean,
those plays.
I can't imagine going to the training camp, watching training camps, and then being that fun to watch, right? I can imagine you're going there just hopefully you get an autograph. But yeah, when the big guys aren't even practicing, even in the preseason, they don't even practice. It's for us, for fantasy football players, it's the best because you don't have to worry about them getting injured. Now, fortunately, the first couple of games of the season are a little lackluster. Might take a couple of weeks for these guys to get into form. So that's kind of aggravating. But other than that, once the season starts rolling, I mean, at least they're playing, right?
Yeah. And I was just thinking, I'm thinking of your guy George Pickens. You know that's where he makes his name is in those practices. All one-handed catch Pickens on the sideline, tiptoeing out. Or so there's some pretty stuff. There's some pretty stuff going on there. But you're probably noticing everybody. Wait, there's three people talking here, and one of them doesn't sound like the other two. So we have a very special guest this week, courtesy of Fantasy Turf War, another one of our fellow Turf Warriors. We should be Turf Warriors. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I got to send that to Corey. A Turf Warrior. We have, I'm going to mess it up, Susan Curran.
That's right.
Yeah, the Gridiron Goddess. So, Susan, tell us your fantasy connection, your football connection, and then tell us all about your website.
So I've been watching football since I was little with my dad. I'm from Texas. He's a Cowboys fan. So we would watch Cowboys games Sunday night. He'd be up late. I'd be watching football with him. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I started playing fantasy football. My very first season, it was a neighborhood league. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was basically using just the ESPN. It was an ESPN app, and I was using the projections on like the numbers to set my lineup. I was like, oh, this guy's supposed to get the most points. I'm gonna put him in my lineup. And my draft, I think I took Tom Brady in like the second round or something, which in a single QB league. I was like, what? He's good, right? Like he's supposed to be the best QB. Like, why would I not draft him? I definitely got laughed at. So I finally started learning the game, and I ended up winning that league 2 seasons later. I got first place. So I've been playing for a long time, and I noticed that there's kind of a hole for female fantasy football players. We're here. I mean, I don't remember what year the stat is from, but it's like 38% of fantasy football players, it may have been in 2018, 2022, I don't remember, are women.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a small number playing fantasy football, and there's just not really a space. So I thought to myself, let's create that space. So most of fantasy football is on X. That still feels weird. It's forever going to be Twitter in my brain. My central focus is Instagram, because for me, I'm taking my audience is female players who are either new to the game of fantasy or new to the NFL at all, a la Taylor Swift, right? So many new Chiefs fans, right? So my goal is to be the place where they can come for information, whether basic fantasy football info. We talk about acronyms. This last week, all of my posts were about the injury lists that have been talking about. What does NFI mean? What does PUP mean? What is drafting players who are on those lists? Like, how does that affect your roster? So taking those kind of concepts in short form so that people can get the quick hit of information that they may need in order to have quick success as a beginning fantasy football player. And we have a merch line and everything to go with it. So my website is mostly, it opens and you see the merch, this hat. If you're watching the video on YouTube, I'm wearing a Gridiron Goddess baseball hat. But there's the merch line, and then there's the football talk where there's a blog. And and my Instagram's down at the bottom, so you can get all the content in one spot. But it's thegridirongoddess.com. And the Instagram is gridiron_goddess.
And all that links I have on our Fantasy Couriers page on the last tab where we have Fantasy Turf War, and I'm going to add in your Instagram to have it on there. They can click through as well if y'all missed that. But
awesome.
Really hard. I mean, gridirongoddess.com. You're like us, making it quite simple. Like some people make it way too complicated. Let's get it how it's going. So, are you a Cowboys fan like you grew up watching, or has your taste in football adapted or disappeared with fantasy in your life?
So I'm mostly loyal to the teams that my players play on when I've drafted them. But I live in the Metroplex, in the DFW Metroplex. So I get all the Cowboys news. We have the local beat writers here. So I mean, it's almost impossible if you follow football and you live in this market, you follow the Cowboys. And I will go find their games to watch. But the other team that I mostly follow is the Rams. My spouse's family is all from the St. Louis area. And so they're Cardinals fans and Royals fans and Rams fans. And then when Rams moved to LA, they just followed their team to Los Angeles. But mostly I'm watching whatever is on Monday night and Thursday night and Sunday night. Doesn't matter who's playing. I'm watching for my players.
Sound like JJ Wang over there, and the allegiances change over the who is on your team. So the question before JJ Wang, I know he has a deep question, is were you on the Puka train before it happened?
Me?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
No idea. For some reason I fell in love with Puka last summer, and I was like, yes. No reason whatsoever.
I've only played Dynasty this is only my second season playing Dynasty. So this is the first off season that I've actively paid attention to rookies.
Okay. That makes sense.
So
rookies generally, he's like, the Dynasty guys, like someone over here beside me, draft too many rookies in redraft leagues, and it doesn't bode well some years. Some years it could 1 year ago. So JJ Wang, you had a deep question you were pondering for us here.
Well, yeah, I just said your Instagram where you're explaining all the PvPs and NFIs. I think that's a fantastic idea, by the way. Especially like I always get a female in one of my leagues. I actually just got one last year, and she's asking questions. What's this? And I'm not a great explainer of things. I mean, that's not really what I kind of enjoy doing. So I think something like what you're doing is a fantastic tool to help out newcomers to the game. Fantastic. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, send them over to my Instagram. Give it a follow.
Absolutely.
You'd be glad to hear the winner of one of our Dynasty leagues last year was his sister. So
nice.
We had her on the show earlier in the year.
Still don't know how she did that.
We know how she did it. The first year that we were all doing the startup draft, she drafted Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And in Superflex, eventually that's going to win you a league.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Even on an average Mahomes year, it's going to win you a league. So we super excited to have Susan here with us. I put out an open invitation to anybody on Fantasy Turf Wars, and she said, I'm in. And we've been messaging a couple weeks and finally got it to work out. So let's get going. But once again, we'll mention again the gridirongoddess.com. Check it out. Share it with everybody. Check out the Instagram site. I put just a quick, easy link. Instagram.com gridiron_goddess. You can go either way. If you don't have an Instagram, you got a direct link on our website that'll be there for you. And ask her any questions. If you forget them, I can't help you at that point. But let's get into the day's show. We got some exciting news, as my T-shirt is telling. I am a loyal fantasy fan, but I'm a diehard Dolphins, and I've never talked about the Dolphins on this show at all. But Tua got paid, and for about an hour and a half, Tua was the third highest paid quarterback in the league, followed by then Jordan Love got paid. So these are two guys who are divisive, maybe to a point. Jordan Love 1 year when he got drafted, I thought he was garbage. Now I'm in love with him, but he's had 1 year of production and he's got a whole slew of who knows receivers. Tua only led the league in passing last year, but everybody still remembers how he gets injured. So what are our thoughts here? Are these guys worth the money? Is it market value? Are these teams going to come back to regret it? What do you think, Susan?
I mean, it's clearly market value. Meanwhile, the Cowboys are just shooting themselves in the foot, having not made something, and these contracts keep coming in. But it's, if I were a GM, I don't know that I would want to be paying these guys that much based on Love having, like you said, the 1 year of experience, but it's almost like they have no choice at this point. I mean, Deshaun Watson broke the contract game for quarterbacks, and I totally get why the owners were pissed at the Browns owner, but they don't have a choice. So whether you think it's a good idea or not, if you want to keep your quarterback, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct on that. They really don't have a choice. And honestly, I think it makes zero sense. I mean, we say Jordan Love had a great year. I mean, he had a great half a year, right? So we're giving this guy 55. We're paying this guy more than Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes for a half of year of success. Kudos. Get your money, dude. Whatever. But I mean, as a GM, it's absolutely, it's somewhere. It's got to stop somewhere. You got to stop. I mean, and honestly, I think Jerry Jones I don't like him at all. But I think the fact that he's not paying Dak, I hope he doesn't pay Dak and Dak fails again in the playoffs so we can move on from Dak. Because I don't think Dak is necessarily the guy. And as far as Tua goes, I mean, it's nonsense. Tua was really good in the first half of the season. But the second half of the season, he wasn't very good. And if I'm paying a guy $55 million, wouldn't you want him to be good the whole season at least once, right? I mean, that would be my opinion. But it's like Susan said, I mean, they don't have a choice. You got to pay them, man.
Yeah, your guy Tua has trouble in the cold, man.
Oh, he does. Yeah, that's a Miami thing in general. They go north, it's all over. Like
It's
Buffalo
good.
in
Miami's
December.
going to have trouble.
Buffalo in December is always the worst game of the year. So, of those two contracts, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. They got essentially the same. Jordan Love got a couple pennies more, in monopoly money. Which contract is going to come out on the end, do you think, better for their team?
I think I'm going to say honestly, I'll say Green Bay just because I like Jordan Love more than I like Tua. I think Jordan Love is a healthier quarterback. I think he's more of a prototypical quarterback. I think he can maybe flourish in more systems than a Tua. But I'll say Jordan Love. Like I said, I just want these guys to show it for a whole season, rather than just a half a season.
What's their age difference?
Oh gosh, I gotta pull them up.
They're pretty much the same age, right?
Let's see.
I think so.
Jordan Love came in the year after Tua. I'm trying to pull them up as we're talking, but I believe Jordan Love is
because he sat for 4 years, right? This was his fifth.
Is it 3?
But if you take Tua's 52-point game out of his fantasy season, it's kind of different. I kind of feel like we're living off, kind of like Devon Achane, right? Kind of living off those huge numbers in the first half of the season. So I think that's where it gets sketchy, man.
Yeah, Tua's +1 on his years, age-wise.
Okay. Yeah, I think also just the fact that Love got to sit behind a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback for so long. He watched it being played at such a high level that he almost doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like he knows what works. He's with a coach that knows what works. So if they keep that system going, as long as LaFleur stays there, I think it's going to end up being better, especially because their wide receiver core is so young. It's not going to bite them in the butt as much because they're on those cheaper contracts for longer than Miami is.
Yeah, I mean,
and plus you don't have to worry about Jordan Love doesn't have to worry about playing in the cold in the middle of December at Buffalo because he already plays in Green Bay. So I mean, when it's cold outside, Jordan Love already has a leg up on what Tua's doing down there in South Beach, just staying warm all the time.
yeah, I according to my dynasty rankings, I have Jordan Love ahead of Tua, so I got to say Jordan Love, right? You know, I'm rooting for Tua with my heart, and I think they're different windows too. I think Tua's biggest window is the next 2 years, the Tyreek years, and then we'll see what happens, what they build after that with them reinventing the defense. Jordan Love, I love some Jordan. I mean, I love the receivers, but you don't know who the receiver is. So if you had to pick right now, this is our debate all off season. Who is Green Bay's #1 receiver this year?
I think it's going to be Watson. I think he's going to get it figured out. And like, I know everybody's on the Jaden Reed train, but I think not you. I think it's going to be Watson. I think he's going to get it figured out. He is their alpha and is just struggled with the role, but I think he's going to get it together.
I would say Christian Watson. I would say Christian Watson as well, but also over the last couple of weeks, I've been listening to a lot of people talk, and I think I'm going to honestly say I feel like the Green Bay Packers wide receivers are some of the most overrated bunch of wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, we all talk about these guys that they're this, they're that, they're great, but literally all these guys are wide receiver 4s. I mean, yeah, they're all young and they all have potential. I would not want this wide receiving core. I would rather have CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of nobodies than this young group of up and coming wide receivers. None of them have really proved anything. So yeah, they're young, they're cool, but I don't want to rely on any of these guys. And I think that's what's going to hurt Jordan Love the most, not having that go-to target that all the other top quarterbacks have.
I think, we saw Tom Brady do it for years. He had 2 years of Randy Moss and a bunch of nobody.
All right, slow down, dude.
Jordan knows not Tom Brady, but
that's Brady, man.
But he before he was Tom Brady, there was others. But I mean, there's people that have done it without it. But the answer to why my funny face is I'm on the Dontavian Wicks train. That's my guy.
Okay, but look at all the top quarterbacks and tell me if they do other than Lamar Jackson, who doesn't really throw to wide receivers anyway. They all have, Pat Mahomes, but they all have like a legitimate #1 guys. And I think that's what. Yeah, well, Josh Allen had Stephon Diggs for the last 3 years.
So yeah, it'll be.
Well, and he doesn't have a single tight end yet that has really popped off either. I mean, there's definitely flashes with Musgrave and Kraft for sure, but it's not like he has his Mark Andrews either.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just got a bunch of number three receivers.
Wait, you see, someone's going to break out.
Yeah. Definitely. There's going to be somebody, and we're going to go, I should have guessed. But
it's probably Bo Melton. It's going to be Bo Melton just to mess with everything. It'll be
right.
So if you want to check out, as we're getting ready to get into our after all that, we got the crux of our episode to go, but check out, I did 2 articles this week on Fantasy Pros high upside players as a preview. My guys were Zach Moss and Calvin Ridley, and guys I'll never draft again, DeAndre Swift and DK Metcalf, all for like different, almost the same reason to look into as you go on, but we're not going to waste time on me. You can go read those articles on fantasypros.com. Links are in the website, but we're going to start out, JJ, today's going to be this or that from JJ Wang, and then myself and the Gridiron Goddess are going to share some quarterback and running back sleepers. So JJ Wang, take us into this or that.
Yes. So since we're doing running backs and quarterbacks, you two are with the sleepers. I stuck with both of them as for what I've got here. So I've got three running backs, 3 wide receivers, or 3 quarterbacks, and I just want y'all to just tell me which one of these guys are going to underperform. My running backs, I tried to stick to the lower RB2 range, and the quarterbacks that lower to mid QB1, QB2. So starting with running backs, I got Najee Harris, 26 years old. 255 carries last year. I know there's Jalen Moore in there. Really not too worried. I still think Najee Harris is going to be the lead back as far as that goes. And he does have some receiving upside. I know last year he only caught 29 passes, but the previous 2 years, his rookie year, I think he had 74. Then the year after that, it had 41. So he does have some receiving prowess. The next guy is Joe Mixon, who's 28 years old. Got moved to Houston. He had 257 carries as well, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. I didn't realize this, but he had 52 catches for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. I didn't realize how valuable he was as far as a receiving back going there. But he's going to Houston. And then we have Brian Robinson, who had the least amount of work out of all these guys, but that is to be expected because coming into the season, he did get shot. So it did take a little while for him to come aboard, which makes sense. But once he did come aboard, he pretty much took the RB1 role, and he performed rather well in a lackluster offense, by the way. So he ended up with 178 carries for 733 yards, and he also provided 36 catches for 368 and 4 touchdowns. I didn't realize he was that good of a receiving back. So, Susan, I'll start with you. Which one of these guys is more likely to overperform this season?
Man, this is really hard. I want to say, man, I think I have to say Najee Harris. Everybody's down on Najee this season. Everybody's like, we love Jaylen Warren. But Tomlin, and now with Arthur Smith coming in, they're going to run the ball, and Najee thrives on volume. That's what he does. And so I think people are down on him. He is still the RB1 in this backfield. So whether or not you see any upside, I still think he's going to end up performing at a steadier floor than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the volume. He's gonna touch the ball a lot, and that's gonna be stellar. I do have to bust JJ Wang's chops and give you the I guess I got to pick someone else because I'm with you on there. But Brian Robinson got shot 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
He's been in the league 2 years. I can't believe that. We're getting old, but he's still. But I'm looking at him almost like I look at he's gonna be the guy I'm gonna say because he's the lowest ranked guy. But I'm thinking of him almost to the point of like any Baltimore Ravens running back. Now that he has Jaden Daniels, who's gonna run the ball and probably throw some RPOs, it might open something up for him. Plus, he had those 36 receptions. And get Gibson out of the way, and then he's going to get some more. I mean, Eckler is probably going to mess all this up now that I'm saying that as I'm thinking out loud. But we don't know what's left in the gas tank for Eckler. But Brian Robinson should outperform to the point because most people don't. I mean, he is ECR running back 28 plus 34. So that's not anything. You're not expecting anything from him, whereas Najee is 25, is ECR 25. Well, these are dynasty starting. So, but they're all at about 20 to, but he's so high that he's got to outperform if that offense is successful moving forward. Unless
so with that happening, I guess going to you, DJ Dove, are we saying Joe Mixon isn't going to be that high volume RB2? Or are you confident? Are you saying that he won't underperform, or is Mixon going to be the guy?
I don't know. I'm supposed to, right? I'm doing a fantasy football show. I've got high hopes for where Mixon went because that Texans offense is so good. But then the more and more I sit and listen more, look up the Texans, he came from they're gonna pass a lot. But it's gonna take the pressure off of him. He's such an unknown. He's older. Like I think he's got 2 years in him. What they paid him, I think he's going to be there 2 years. He's going to be successful. So underperforming in this group for me, you gave a great question. I mean, underperforming probably because we do think CJ Stroud's going to regress this year, so we'll assume the entire offense regresses. But this team made Devin Singletary look good, so I'm figuring if they make him look good, Joe Mixon's a ton better. I mean, underperforming, if I had to guess, I would say they're all about the same. I'd say the only way that Najee would underperform because all of a sudden Warren becomes the guy that we pretend he is.
Right, yeah. Because Warren's still he was efficient, but he just did not get the work level still. And the only thing about Brian Robinson Jr. is he and Eckler profile very similarly. He's just a younger version of Eckler almost. So that's the question there is, are they going to use the veteran more as like the solid presence for a younger quarterback for him to be there instead?
It's funny. You would think that we're up near DC, and that's who we hear. So we get your opposite. We get your all's enemies, and we hear about Washington all the time. And I really haven't heard a whole lot about Eckler. We heard Eckler signed with Washington, and then now it's all about Daniels.
Yeah, it's been very quiet.
It's an intriguing thing. So is that's really good or really scary? I'm not too sure.
All right, so let's switch over to I got quarterbacks here. We're going to go the low end QB1s, high end QB2s. I got Brock Purdy, he's 24. We all know what Brock Purdy did. He had 4,200 yards last year, 31 touchdowns. Then we got my favorite quarterback. I got Trevor Lawrence. I'm still waiting for this guy to do something right. We got 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. Bit disappointing so far in his career. And then we got Justin Herbert. I think it's probably the most questionable one out of all three of these. Don't know which way he's going to go because he's been at the top. But ever since he's been there, he's kind of stumbled a little bit. With 3,100 yards, though, he did miss a few games, only played in 13 games. So back to you, Susan. Which one of these guys are you predicting to overperform?
Herbert, hands down. I mean, you're bringing in Greg Roman, and people talk about, oh, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. Well, I mean, there's Lamar. I mean, Lamar. Now, granted, Herbert is not Lamar when it comes to running ability. That's definitely, he's more of a pocket passer. But that doesn't mean that the offense that Roman is bringing is not going to allow for Herbert to do what he does. I mean, he's a smart coordinator. He's going to pull to the strengths of his quarterback. And Herbert can take off. It's not like he doesn't ever do that. So I think we're going to see the start of more of that Herbert running, maybe some more designed runs for Herbert, the way they did for Lamar, even if it's not at the level. And you can't doubt Harbaugh. Harbaugh's going to do what he's going to do, and a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So I think Herbert is valued so low right now that he's going to outperform what he's doing ADP wise.
Can he be my answer to both questions?
Right. Yeah.
Like
I think so.
I really think, like, I look at Herbert and I'm like, yeah, he's so low right now that he can't get lower for Justin Herbert, because guys following after him are like the guys you don't want to be your quarterback. So I mean, he's down there in the range of like the old guys, the Russell Wilsons. We are hit or miss. We'll talk about him in a bit, or the guys that people don't like and you just hold your nose and play them. But he does have the profile, and he has the hardball. But then again, he also is throwing to Gus said, the receiving core. I mean, their number one receiver last year is supposedly not even in their top three receiving core. He's throwing to Lab McConkey, who I was high on initially, and I look more into him. Like, he's coming into the league with really not a ginormous profile. He's throwing to Joshua Palmer, who was basically Lad McConkey in college. Both those guys, they're coming into the league without a lot of college production, and now he got rid of great Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams when he's healthy is good. So which Herbert will we get? I just called him Josh. Justin Herbert will we get? I think he's the answer to both questions. So he's going to do better, but he's going to also not do as good as the diehard Herberters think he'll do. Does that even make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that makes sense. No. But it's just crazy how everybody is, like so excited when we say Jordan Love and his young wide receiving crew, and how, that's going to expand. Then we go to Justin Herbert, who's actually been like an elite quarterback with a young wide receiver crew, and we kind of hold it against him, right? We haven't really seen like none of the wide receivers in Green Bay were supposed to be any good coming into the NFL. We never even heard of any of them, right? At least as far as Justin Herbert, we've heard of Lad McConkey coming in. I know nobody's a fan of Quentin Johnson, but Jim Harbaugh seems to be a fan of Quentin Johnson. At least he's played, he's got that year in the NFL. I just think it's funny how we see both of those wide receiver groups on opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think you're absolutely right with Herbert. He could go either way. It's just how much is Harbaugh going to run the ball? Because when he was with San Francisco, he did make Colin Kaepernick look fantastic, right? So, I mean, if he can make Colin Kaepernick look good, I'm pretty sure Justin Herbert could be a top flight quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know why I just have this.
But yeah, there we go.
Green Bay. I was saying I don't know
Oh
why.
yeah, I mean everybody does.
Team core feels better.
I'm the only one.
Yeah,
everybody else feels the same. Everybody else is slobbering over those guys too.
So Susan, what would your answer be for it? Do you think Trevor or Brock Purdy, one of those, is going to take a dip? Or are you with me on my convoluted, confusing Justin Herbert?
It's Lawrence is hard because we haven't seen it yet, and you just want to see it. He's being paid, like people have seen it. So that makes it hard for him. And just like you said with Colin Kaepernick, Purdy looks good. Is it the system or is it Purdy? We don't.
It's 100% the system. I think it's 100% the system.
So it's the same. It's the same questions. I feel like Herbert is the one that for me personally, that I see any ceiling. If you're going for ceiling, you have to go for Herbert because the other guys are a product of their system or haven't proven themselves.
So sure. If Brock Purdy's a product of his system and you believe the San Francisco system is so amazing, JJ Wang, what are the chances Brock Purdy in about 20 years is Tom Brady? Isn't this how Tom Brady started, as a low draft pick in a great system, throwing this or that?
Well, first off, Kyle Shanahan's got to win a Super Bowl. So until Kyle Shanahan wins a Super Bowl, can't none of Kyle Shanahan's quarterbacks be considered Tom Brady. But if Purdy starts winning Super Bowls with Kyle Shanahan, sure, absolutely, why not? He could be the next coming of Tom Brady. Who knows?
Oh, that'd be crazy. The last pick in the draft. That'd be a great story. Anyway, so there's our this or that. Now we're going to jump into a little sleepers over the next couple of weeks. And as we were preparing, Susan and I were going back and forth trying to figure out what would we consider a sleeper. And I said, let's each decide that and share as we're talking where we went and see how our approaches are the same and different. Although it's funny, I think they're probably very similar because I was looking at some of you stole some of my quarterback. You stole one of my quarterbacks. I love those two guys. But yeah, you stole some of my players. So we might be the same area. So when you're thinking sleeper, as far as for this category, we're looking at redrafts as people are getting into draft season. What qualifies someone to be a sleeper for you?
For me, it's somebody in the later rounds that has upside. Somebody who you can take if you're looking at quarterbacks. If you're taking quarterbacks in the 8th, 9th round, because you're in a 1 QB league and quarterbacks, the top quarterbacks are going in the 3rd, maybe, or the 4th, which is where you're having to get Mahomes and Hurts and those guys. But if you're getting a quarterback down at round 8, that may not necessarily have to be a streamer where you're having to rotate the QBs out every week. So that's what I was looking at, is somebody you can take in the later rounds where you can load up on other talent up at the top. But this guy will bring you the production that you need in order to survive.
I think I'm on board with you there. Like I went past what would be almost like a low end quarterback 2 on, and then I looked at almost what would be a running back 3-ish kind of area. So that's where they would fall.
Yeah, my running backs, I think, are both being drafted as running back 4s.
Ooh, let me see.
I think
around the same rate.
I think you're running the way you do running back. I think the running backs have to be a lot lower to be considered a sleeper. Like, of course, a quarterback, there's only 32 starters, so you kind of got to knock the sleepers off at number 32 because you really can't predict, guys coming in and
backups.
So so those bottom tier quarterbacks, that outside of, say, the top 24, I feel like they would have to be your sleepers. And as far as running backs goes, they obviously can't be a starter. So you're looking at, backups that can come in and kind of take over the work. So, I mean, I feel like they kind of got to be that low RB3, RB4 type to be considered a sleeper.
Well, we both of us with our running backs, we do have guys that are starters.
As of right now, yes,
As
mine are
of
both
right
starters.
now, they're starters or committee starters or something to that point. Because the NFL really, I mean, the bell cow. I mean, there's Derrick Henry, there's CMC. There's bell cows going through, but there's so much system work. I mean, so much running back committees, which I think is going to get worse if we hit that 18-game season. So let's jump in. Who is your first quarterback? Oh, he's gonna make my heart so happy.
All right, so I went with Russell Wilson, who is currently being drafted based on that Fantasy Pros ADP half point. Currently being drafted as quarterback 26. You're drafting him. If I looked at the ADP right, I think you're getting him in the 14th round. He's almost going undrafted. And in the last season on that Denver team, which clearly was a mess. He didn't want to be there. Peyton didn't want him there. It was not good. He'd never finished below quarterback 23. So you are drafting him below his floor based on the previous season. He gives you at least somewhat of a rushing floor. And he's not young, but he rushed for over 340 yards last season in 2023. So that's not nothing. And he has had a 4,000-yard, 40 touchdown season. It was 2020 with the Seahawks, which was a totally different setup and whatever, but he's done it. He has proven it. I'm going to keep going. There's lots of things. So
talk about Russell Wilson all day. He was my other guy.
Okay, great. People keep asking about, well, what about Justin Fields, right? They brought Justin Fields in. Justin Fields is going to take over. That, according to Tomlin, is not what's happening. Now, Fields was taking some first-team reps last week because Wilson got some calf issue from pushing a sled or something, but they're not worried about it. Wilson is in pole position as to quote Tomlin. And the Steelers invested heavily in their line in the draft. Their first 3 picks in the draft were linemen, 2 offensive, 1 defensive linemen. And so they're clearly, I mean, Kenny Pickett couldn't do anything, but they're trying to make it better. And where they started in the draft this year was on that line. And so that's going to help. The last thing is, if you believe in George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, then somebody's throwing them the ball. And you got to be able to believe in the quarterback that is sending them the ball. And that's going to be Russell Wilson.
So of course, the way I define my sleeper as a top 32 starter, you're going to bring in the one guy that I'm probably going to question out of all of them, because I'm a huge Justin Fields fan. For Pittsburgh, I mean, I think it's going to work out great. You're paying Russell Wilson $1 million. You traded for a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields.
Out.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to work. I think it's going to work out either way. So it kind of who are you more of a fan of? If you don't like Justin Fields, obviously Russell Wilson has performed over his career. He did not really look all that good in Denver, but like you said, circumstances really didn't allow him to. But I mean, honestly, I would probably have to say by the end of the season, Justin Fields is probably. I would say Justin Fields would be the starter, but that's just how I see it. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be able to perform at a high enough level to where, hey, I'm going to give you another look next year. Let's see what Justin Fields can do at some point in the season. Because I think Steelers always finish 500, right? They're always like 8-8, 9-8. And I think at some point they're going to be 500, and you're going to have to try to make a change to maybe see if you can get into.
They went 10-7 last year, though. And so if with the rotation, and so I don't know that Fields is going to get put in unless they start losing, and Tomlin just doesn't lose.
That's true.
And so I don't know that
never lost.
The call for Fields is not going to come. There's not going to be the, oh, well, Russell Wilson is losing, the team's losing because of Russell Wilson. I don't know that that's going to come because Tomlin coaches around that.
I think the call from the fans will be calling for Justin Fields even before the season starts.
It's Pittsburgh. They do it their way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the fans will be calling for Justin Fields, but I think Mike Tomlin's going to stick to what his word and what he said, and he's going to go with Russell Wilson. Absolutely.
Oh, no, I'll tell you, Justin Fields will play this year. He's going to play week 1 kickoff return to start the season on the new kickoff return. Your boy would be down there getting clobbered with this new exciting kickoff return. But yeah, this was the guy that made me the most sad. I was throwing him out there because I just think I don't know what it is. I never was a Russell Wilson believer when he came in. It was funny because my brother was at NC State when he was there, so I saw stuff going through, and I was like, he looks like a nice guy. And then he just was like, I just don't want Russell Wilson. And then he just beat me so often that I had to start cheering for him. And he's that guy that, looking on paper last year, looked like he was great, but he was terrible. But I just think it's Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh. You could send a bowl of trash to Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden it's going to be good because that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. You know, Tomlin's never had a losing season, so that's
blows my mind every time you think about that. I'm like, they're not fun to watch, and no. I just like it's not enjoyable. But they win. They get up above 500 somehow.
Somehow I don't know how they do it, but yeah. So I'm going to go a guy that I just like, and there might not be a lot of reasons why I like him, but he's one spot higher, I guess, than Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson is ECR number 28. Bo Nix is number 29. And I don't know I always argue, there's always that discussion, can you have a rookie as a sleeper? And I like Bo Nix because I trust Sean Payton, and Sean Payton gets his guy. Sean Payton gets to develop his guy, and the argument is, well, Bo Nix, he threw 76% of his passes in college. Yeah, and they were 3 yards down the field. And I'm like, you know what? I play fantasy football. He's got a bunch of scat backs. He's going to throw 3-yard passes to the scat backs. They're going to go for it, and that's how he will get his yards. So if you're looking at a guy, I mean, obviously, I think with any of these guys, you better, if you're doing one quarterback, you're taking 2 quarterbacks if you take these guys just in case, because you need insurance. But
right.
Bo Nix would never be your QB1 to start the season. So you might draft the guy you're going to mention in a moment, and then throw Bo Nix in there. And if Bo Nix uses that big arm, he's got Cortland Sutton, who can still score touchdowns. I think Dulce is going to step up and like 3 or 4 different scat backs, depending on who makes the team. And that I think he could be surprisingly successful, considering you're getting him. You might get him off waiver wire. Let's be honest here. It's rookie season, so he'll still come late because he's a starting-ish quarterback. But I just, for what you could get out of him as a sleeper, it makes him valuable in the range, because by drafting him, you could get a CD Lamb followed by, you could go stud running back, stud receivers, and then I mean, he could, if I'm wrong, you're playing the waiver wire anyway, so it doesn't kill you. But your skill positions are stellar.
Didn't Peyton compare him to Drew Brees?
I love Brees. He's my favorite player. That's why. I think that's what it is. Yes.
Did I make that up?
No.
Okay. And I mean, everybody knows, right? Peyton and Brees, like, greatest coach quarterback duo of all time. And so if he just is like, hey, Nix is my Drew Brees now, let's roll with it. You never know.
Well,
here we go.
Well, yes, absolutely. You never know. I mean, Bo Nix could turn into this great quarterback, whatever. But when we always talk about Sean Payton, he's always great. Let's trust Sean Payton. Okay, we can trust Sean Payton, right? But he always had Drew Brees to fall back on. So, I mean, it's easy to trust when you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback that can carry your team. Plus, he had some pretty good wide receivers over the years, and he had pretty decent running backs over the years to go along with those Saints teams. So, yeah, he was a good coach. So he comes to Denver, got Russell Wilson, right, Hall of Fame quarterback. He was good in Seattle. Absolutely did not work out. His numbers were okay, but his team absolutely was terrible. Now, they didn't get along, so that kind of helps. But their receiving core is not really good. Their running back core is not really good. Their tight ends are not really good. So, I mean, Sean Payton better be one hell of a coach to take a team that's not really good for Bo Nix to be a sense of any good, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's time to show off that coaching prowess.
And he will. that's all I.
Yeah.
So,
We hope
hey,
so. We'll see how good of a coach he is when his team isn't very good.
well, I want to get more excited. I love your next guy. Your next guy, he was my boy last year. I was in love. My heart was palpitating. Tell us about him. Tell us about him.
Okay, so my next guy is Baker Mayfield,
Oh
Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm feeling some annoyance at my picks from JJ over there.
All these picks so far, so it really doesn't matter.
I love them all.
All right, so he's being drafted as QB 21. That's the middle of round 12. He finished QB 10 last year. Now, to be fair, he had a couple games that pushed those numbers up. That is true. But he was still QB 18 in points per game when you take the last half of the season. So it's still above where you're drafting him. The other thing, two other major points. One, the major players, except for the OC, which I'll get to in a minute, have stayed the same. His receivers haven't changed. The line is there. They're moving Godwin back into the slot, which is, according to training camp news, right? Which is where he thrives. That allows Baker to get it out faster to who he wants it to be. Their running back, who I'm just totally blanking on right now, Rashad White. He catches passes. So the weapons are there for Baker to be successful. The one big change, the OC. Canales left. People credit Canales with doing a lot, right? Took Geno. Baker had his resurgence last year. However, Liam Cohen came from the Rams specifically to the Bucks to be with Baker. Every time that there's some sort of interview or when he was hired, he specifically mentioned Baker as him wanting to be there to be with Baker. That Baker has the energy, Baker made football fun for the Rams again, all of this stuff. So you have an OC that is so tuned into your quarterback, and that's going to make a huge difference. He got paid $50 million 3-year extension, $100 million deal, 3 years, $50 million guaranteed. Obviously, that's not the highest, but still, it's up with the market with the rest of them. And the O-line, they drafted 2 rookies that PFF, Pro Football Focus, mentioned the Tampa Bay line as one of the most improved in the offseason. Now, they're rookies, so there's questions still because they're rookies, but they're also investing. This is a theme of my sleepers, is that O-line change.
Good theme. It's a good theme to have.
Yeah. So it just, the pieces are falling into place to Baker to even either keep that, at least probably be a low-end QB1 again this season.
Yeah, so while I'm not a fan of Baker in any way, I will have to agree. I was obviously wrong on Baker last year. I didn't think he was any good. I think last year Baker would have been one of those true like definition of a sleeper quarterback where you think they're going to suck, and then they come in and they outperform anything that anybody thought they were going to do. So, I mean, while I don't like him, I can't agree with you on Baker. I mean, he's still getting drafted pretty low. I still think the expectations are low enough to where you would think, all right, I think Baker could probably compete for that, one of those lower QB1s, especially if Mike Evans is still there. I mean, if Mike Evans is still going to be catching 60-yard bombs 7 times a game. I mean, I don't know how you fail, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's making me excited. And I'm hearing good news out of Chris Godwin, who we all left for dead, even though he gets 1,000 yards as well. But speaking of Dave Canales,
There you go.
segue right into my other guy who I think we all think is kind of dead, like left for dead. Bryce Young, drafted #1 overall. He's about as big as I am, a smidge bigger, but everybody.
So did you see the book bag picture of him walking across the street? Did you happen to see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I did.
I thought that was hilarious. So
He's like
anyway,
wearing a
go
red
ahead.
t-shirt and jeans. He's got a backpack.
Yeah.
It's like
It
it looks
looks
like
like
a
a
sixth
kid.
grader.
Looked
going
like
to
he was
class.
seventh grader at his best right there.
And this is why
Go
he's
ahead,
a
sorry.
sleeper. He looks like he's 12 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, Jane Daniels is a giant dude, but he's gonna get broken in half. But he had a terrible year. He was given nothing around him. He was abused. He was beaten up. His #1 receiver was 72-year-old Adam Thielen. So they brought in a coach that made Baker Mayfield the greatest thing since string cheese. They then went out and they got him. They drafted a rookie for him to grow with as he's going, because he's only in second year. They signed Deontay Johnson, who's controversial for people, but that dude is a target hog. He'll catch everything. So you got a PPR machine there. They drafted a running back to grow with him. They still have Chuba in there going on. And most importantly, speaking of lines, they stole my guard Robert Hunt from the Dolphins, added a couple tackles. They're making sure he doesn't get killed down in Carolina, so that the 7 people that come to the games now have something to cheer for as Bryce Young goes into year 3, where do I think his sleeperness is going to get him to a QB1? No. I think he's still sitting in QB2 territory at this point, is where if he sleeper jumps up. But I have some high hopes for Bryce Young this year, even though I don't have him ranked I have him ranked 5 higher than most ECR, but I think he's going to make a giant leap this year and surprise a lot of people in the league with all of those changes aforementioned. What do y'all think?
I think the only issue I have with Bryce is I think he's definitely going to get better, but I think he's going to get NFL better and not fantasy better. I think you'll see improvements as far as, him making the right play here and there, but I just don't think his ceiling as far as fantasy goes is going to be good enough, because I just don't think the Panthers team their offense is going to be that good to provide Bryce Young with enough offensive power. If you look at Baker Mayfield, at least he's got weapons really all over the place. Bryce Young is just one of those, he could be a good quarterback, but he just really doesn't have any legitimate offensive weapons. Like you said, we like Deontay Johnson, but I'm not necessarily sure Deontay Johnson is an offensive weapon per se. So, I think that's going to have to change before, he can be considered, being able to compete for, a QB1.
Do you think he can get over 3,000 yards?
Sure, in today's NFL, 17 games, sure. He can get 3,000 yards, but 3,000 yards in today's NFL, it's really not that impressive, I don't guess.
Over 11 touchdowns?
I would maybe. I would hope.
Last year he threw for 28, 77, and 11 touchdowns, but then he had 10 interceptions because he was getting tackled, and he was sacked 62 times. So I'm looking at the needle is going crazy.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think he's definitely going to get better, but I think he's going to be a better NFL player than he's going to be a reliable fantasy player. That's all I'm saying.
I know he was your honorable mention, Susan. What do you think about Bryce Young?
He was. So the thing is, I don't want to give away all of everything because I'm going to talk about a different Panthers player later. But
Cliff notes then.
Yeah, right. He's been left for dead, right? Everybody's like, nope, we out. And it's interesting because Trevor Lawrence got way more leeway when he had his terrible first season under Urban Meyer. It was like nope, do over. I'm done. We're just not going to count the first year under Urban Meyer. I don't understand why Bryce Young isn't getting at least some semblance of grace either. Because, like you said, he walked into a terrible situation. The coaching was not as bad, for sure, but there's still so many other things that went wrong on that team that it just doesn't make sense to me why people aren't giving him the grace that Trevor Lawrence got.
So I think the biggest difference, I mean, this is just, but I think Trevor Lawrence is more of your prototypical quarterback, 6'6", 225. Bryce Young is 5'8", $127. I think that's like the biggest,
Those aren't
like the biggest difference why he might. Yeah, they're definitely not official stats. But I mean, to me, I think that's the biggest reason why Bryce Young doesn't get as much leeway as, say, a Trevor Lawrence. I just don't think people trust Bryce Young's ability to be able to make it as an NFL quarterback in NFL. That's how I feel about it.
But he's the smartest. Bryce Young was the smartest.
CJ Stroud wasn't he the one that wasn't very smart?
Yeah,
CJ was the dumbest box of rocks, evidently. But
yeah, according to whatever that stupid test is.
The Wonderlic.
Yeah.
Well, holy moly, we had too much fun here that I think we need to bring the Gridiron Goddess back next week. We started talking quarterbacks, and we talked for so long that I think we need to make this 2 episodes. It seems like every time we have a guest from Fantasy Turf Wars, we end up doing 2 episodes. So what do you think about coming back next week for more running back talk? What do you think, Susan? Are you in?
Let's do it. I'm in.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm excited. So if you got quarterbacks this week, next week we're going to bring in running backs. And as you hear, listen to the Couriers all the time. Sometimes we make up stuff as we go. We talked about running backs earlier, but we had so much fun. We said we'll do them next week. So she'll be back for 2 weeks in a row. You get double the pleasure, double the fun, double mint gum. It's 1984 all over again. But as always, give us before JJ Wayne gives his wisdom, tell us where we can find the Gridiron Goddess again.
All right. So thegridirongoddess.com. Or at gridiron_goddess on Instagram.
Excellent. And all the links are also in our podcast notes and on the webpage. So JJ Wang, give us some wisdom to get us out of here.
All right, this is my wisdom. So as much American pride as I take in the 4th of July and the Nathan's hot dog eating contest and Joey Chestnut, I think they're American. I love them as an American. Nothing fills my heart more with American pride than watching the Olympics. Like when you watch them, you hear these guys' stories, ladies' stories. I'm not too much of the story guy. I'm like more of the competition part. But you find yourself watching sports that you've never really considered watching. Found myself watching some archery this morning. Found myself watching some mountain biking. Who knew mountain biking can be so exciting? But when your country is out there busting their ass for you, you're like, you know what? That's American pride right there. And I just love watching the Olympics. I've watched them since I'm old enough to remember, and it's something that I've always done. And I think that's the most entertaining TV that you can have is the Olympics. And I think it's just absolutely amazing. So as always, trust yourself and trust the process.